Recently, many former employees of the We charity have come forward to the media with aspects of the We organization they felt were antithetical to its claimed mission. Several anonymous sources came forward to the CBC's The National, where they alleged they were pressured to attend events for Finance Minister Bill Morneau, who recently had to pay back $41,000 in travel expenses covered by the charity, and whose daughter works for the organization. Jesse Brown from Canadaland also had a great piece I've linked below, where he interviews 3 sources who worked for We and disputed some of their claims concerning their completed projects and missions abroad. But I want to focus on an anonymous former employee of the We charity who worked in corporate engagements and grants, and who was interviewed recently by CBC's The Current, where he made some unsettling allegations about the charity and its corporate sponsorships. Take a listen, and then I will discuss it.
Concerns that I had, as well as the wider team, about, I guess, 2 things in relation to corporate, on the corporate side of things. The first was about who we were partnering with, and what was also in our pipeline of potential corporate partners. And the second was, the content of what we were actually proposing. Normally in the sector, when it comes to corporate partnerships, a corporation will provide some funding or a donation, and usually what they'll receive in return is the ability for them to say through their own communication channels that we provided X amount of funding for this initiative. What we saw very early on, it seemed as if We charity, its operations seemed to be entirely driven by its donors. For example, with the corporation, if we were partnering with a corporation that wanted to do, let's say, an initiative or an educational curriculum on financial literacy, that kind of then took precedence. We rarely actually checked in with an operational team about whether that was actually addressing, a community need or a need identified by youth. It seemed as if the content of the partnership was dictated by what a corporation wanted to partner with us on.
So you're saying that you were serving the needs of the corporation rather than the needs of the community.
Certainly. And whenever we tried to, of course, do some due diligence as a team to check with an operational team or do some research, the pressure we got was in no uncertain terms was not to look into this and to just continue with developing an attractive proposal.
Did you have concerns about partnering with corporations that you didn't feel really were aligned with the We mission? Yes.
Some of the current partnerships that we had at the time with companies like, we had a partnership with Boeing in the United States. So Boeing is known as a manufacturer of airplanes, but it's also an arms manufacturer. And so companies like Boeing we had concerns about. We had partnerships with Dow Chemical, which we obviously had concerns about. There were partnerships that the organization had with mining companies, like Potash Corp as an example. It also seemed as if the pipeline of companies that we were, pitching to seemed, that they had either environmental issues in their supply chain, issues with labor. So there were numerous concerns that we raised as a team about the reputation of the companies that we were partnering with or attempting to partner with. And, what we had flagged as a team was this might actually end up being a reputational risk for We charity over time, which is that if someone starts to cover that, one of our partners actually has issues in their supply chain with child labor, this is obviously an issue for the organization.
Did you raise this with the Kielburger brothers?
We did. We raised it in terms of the team having the independence to actually have and institute corporate vetting practices, and that was shut down by the Kielburgers and a group of directors.
What the former employee is describing in that interview is that the We charity is serving powerful corporations to launder their reputations while not actually addressing their underlying and questionable corporate practices that often directly contribute to the societal issues the charity claims to want to solve. If these corporations actually adopted practices that did not leave their labor forces in perpetual poverty, did not contaminate natural environments, and that rejected shady supply chains, they would do more to solve the underlying issues that the We charity claims to want to address than some hollow charitable gesture designed to improve their image and quell further inquiry into their dubious production practices. Worse still, the former employee alleges that the donors, not the charity, often dictated the operations and types of programs offered by We in overseas operations, even if the programs they wanted to develop had no real value or impact in the communities they claimed they wanted to support. What I found particularly monstrous, though, is that some corporate sponsors may have had child labor practices embedded in their production. It is especially grotesque that the We charity, which grew out of Free the Children charity, and that worked to establish basic child labor laws in third world countries, would now be serving corporate donors who themselves use this disgusting practice. Not only that, but instead of shaming and rejecting corporate donations from these sources built off the profits of child labor on principle, they would allegedly work to rehabilitate and enhance their corporate reputations and brands as their primary focus. This is a claim that Jaron Kerr previously reported in Canadaland. His sources, who are all former employees, claim that the We charity had connections to at least 3 companies that use slave or child labor in their practices. The companies that had links mentioned in the article included Hershey's supply chains in Africa and Kellogg's in Indonesia, both of which had allegedly relied on some form of child labor in their supply chains. This is not charity. It is a marketing campaign posing as humanitarianism as a means of covering up corporate malfeasance, and it goes back to the systematic way that a neoliberal logic has permeated society. Don't forget, a lot of unfortunate circumstances that the charities like We try to address around the world are the direct outcome of wealthy Western nations imposing trade agreements with poorer countries designed to benefit wealthy corporations. These agreements dismantled their welfare states and regulatory systems to allow multinational corporations to turn an even bigger profit, while avoiding environmental and labor violations they could not get away with at home. In turn, this drives the need for increasing charity abroad and at home, as the regulatory race to the bottom through these trade deals leads to the export of decently paid jobs here to a subjugated and disempowered workforce abroad, including perpetuating supply chains that still use child labor in 2020. Most of what charities do should be the natural extension of an empathetic and responsive welfare state. Instead, the state has mostly retreated to its core responsibilities in the neoliberal era, based on the assumption that private charities and individuals will bridge the gap. But this naturally only leads to the development of a charitable industry, and although many charities do great work, which meets the idealism and aims they seek, some also seem to drift away from their philanthropic goals and become more responsive to the donor class that sustains them. We's alleged aim to misdirect attention away from the practices that its corporate donors engage in also propagates the continued necessity of its charity. Sounds like an excellent deal for the corporate donors and the Kielburger brothers. Not so much for those who need and deserve real help. Anyway, please like and subscribe.